Hey everybody, so I wanted to come on and do a video about the cost that we had during adoption. And now every adoption is different. So this is our experience with a private adoption in state, because I know it can be different if it's in state or out of state. So we had a private adoption that was babies born in the same state we lived in, so there were no issues there. So first I'll talk about our attorney fees, and hopefully Hudson is napping right now. I've got his monitor, so hopefully he will sleep through this and I can make it through the video. But so we had our attorney fees, and in total it was about $5,500. Ended up being 54 something. But how that kind of was broken down, we had a meeting with the attorney, like before we even met with birth parents, when we first decided that we were going to adopt and wanted to pursue private adoption. We went and met with him just to kind of get his, get the information, get comfortable with him, and see kind of, where we needed to go. So after we met with him, because we met with him in August, I guess, and a couple weeks after we met with him is when we met the birth parents, and they gave us some ideas for how to get a birth mom. So I'll do another video on that and some tips for there. But so we called him back. I called him and I told him we have a birth mom and somebody we know, through somebody we know. We didn't know her. And so he told me to, kind of just keep him posted. Let me know when I was ready for him to meet with her, because once he met with her, that was when our first payment was due. We didn't have to pay anything for the initial consultation, all of that. That was free. Once he met with the birth mom, that's when we would have to start paying. So we waited, because that was, we first met with him in August, and then we first met the birth parents the beginning of September. And it was the beginning of October when they said that they wanted to do the adoption, they wanted to go with us. And then we still waited about another month, because we were getting together with them almost once a week, close to once a week. So we wanted to just make sure that they were, sure about it, because once they met with the attorney, we lost money. So at this point, we hadn't paid anything, and we stressed that to them. We said, once you meet with our attorney, we're going to lose money, so please don't do this unless you're sure you want to do the adoption. So we had to pay $4,000 to the attorney up front, and that was the retainer fee. And so after the attorney would meet with the birth parents, we lost $1,500. That was, the initial cut for after they've made contact. And before they met with them, he sent her, overnighted her some paperwork as far as medical background, kind of a birth plan, some other stuff. And she actually, when she got that, she had messaged me and said, hey, do you want to come do lunch and we can go over my birth plan and fill it out together? That way we're on the same page. So it was really good that it helped open up those conversations between us, where I didn't have to ask her. She just saw that and she thought, hey, why don't you come? We can be all together on it. But so they met with the attorney in early part of November. And so then the attorney, he got the initial paperwork, but there really was nothing for him to do until the baby was born. He had, what he needed to ready to go for when the baby was born, that he could come to the hospital to do that. So then when she changed her mind, we waited, because the way their fees worked was, after he meets with the birth parents, you lose $1,500. Then if he gets called to the hospital, but on his way to the hospital she changes her mind, you lose another $500. If he gets there and she doesn't sign, you lose money. If she signs but then immediately changes her mind, all the different breakdowns. And so, by this point we were kind of having our worries, some things were kind of going on. So we're like, we're just going to wait till the baby's born and she, says she's going to do it before we're going to tell the attorney. Because I was like, I want to make sure that they're not going to tack on these extra fees, that we're going to lose money if she changes her mind. So of course she did. So I told them, I didn't tell them anything until after she'd had the baby and that she had decided to keep him. So then they actually had, a couple weeks later, because it was right before Christmas. And so beginning of the year, I had got in contact with them, and I'm like, are we going to get this money back? What do we need to do to get it back? And so they sent us a check that was for $2,300 and change, like $2,300 something dollars. So we ended up losing about, just over $1,600 from where they met with her, or met with both of them, and faxed, not faxed, mailed the paperwork and all of that. They tack on those tiny little fees. They get you, or they can, but that is a different rant for a different video. So they gave us that check for, it was $2,300, but luckily before, we got it cashed, we found out that she had changed her mind, and so he just said to void the check, not worry about it. So then he went and he got her to sign everything, and then a couple weeks after that, because we hadn't finished our home study, we had to finish our home study and do other things. So once it was ready for him to submit the petition for us to do the adoption, we had to pay him another $855 at that point. And then that was in March that they filed the petition, and we finalized the adoption June 9th. So at the courthouse, when he was there, we had to give him another check for $500. And then about a week after that, we got the final bill that had all of the little nitpicky, faxing this, printing this. We got charged $2.70 for them to print our home study. Really? But so, like I said, different rant. I won't go off on that tangent. But so then we got another, that we owed them another $113 for all of those little final expenses. So it ended up being, oh gosh, I just added it up. Let's see if it's still on my calculator. $5,468 in total that we paid to the attorney. So that was the attorney's fees for all of it. But even with private adoption, and I believe this is every state, I don't think there's any that are exempt. Now, private adoptions, you have to have a home study. So with our home study, we found a company that does it, where we're at, well, like in Atlanta, so it wasn't too far. And they were $1,000, which from everywhere I saw was the cheapest. But they were great. I had people refer them, so it wasn't like some random, little person. Like, I knew that it was going to be a legitimate home study. Usually they're about like $1,500 to $2,500, I believe. So we did our home study, and because we had started it. So our initial visit back in December, or it must have been November, when we went and met with them, and we had to pay $500. And that, she kind of got us all the stuff. We talked about things, and she gave us the list of, this is what you need to have done. So then we put it on kind of a hiatus once things started to go. We didn't think it was going to happen, because once you do a home study, it lasts for 12 months, and then you have to update it. If you haven't adopted, you have to pay a couple $100 and have them come update it, where they're going to redo some stuff. I think you have to fill out some more information. So we wanted to wait. We're like, if this isn't going to happen, we don't know when we're going to be able to adopt, so we don't want to waste this $500 that we've already paid if, we're going to have to just update it. So we kind of were like holding off, and then, we ended up getting him, so we did have to finish that. So that was another $500 that we had left to pay for that. Plus, when they come out for the home visit, we had to pay the mileage. And that was, I think it ended up being like $44. So we paid $500 for the first visit, and then like $544 for the second visit. And our home study, which I know adoption agencies sometimes do it different, but with ours, for private adoption, we went and met with the social worker and it wasn't even at their office. It was at a Einstein Bagels. So we went and had a meeting there. She came to our house. We had the bios we had to fill out, the like 20-page, take you 5 hours to fill them out. And so we had sent that to her. So with our second visit, she came here to the house and she asked us questions, showed around the house. And at this point, we already had Hudson. And then there was one final visit where we went to her, which seemed like a pointless visit to me, because we just drove all the way out there. It was about 40 minutes from where we live, just for her to, pretty much say she had everything she needed except this, and here, this is when I'm going to have it finished. So I feel like we could have done that over the phone, but whatever. So we went, and that was, and then, the next week she had everything done and sent over to our attorney. So there was that fee. And then with us, because, and this yet again is different with an agency as opposed to private, and it's different depending on what state you live in. Because in Georgia, you are not allowed to not give the birth mom money, but you're not supposed to pay for things. You can't buy groceries, you can't pay rent, phones, nothing like that. So you are allowed to like go out to eat, when you're talking about things, we're just getting to know you. So we did pay for several meals out with them. We did pay for an ultrasound. We did the 3D, 40, whatever it is, ultrasound. And that was $109. And then the several meals, because we went for about a month and a half, weekly, either dinners with all four of us, or I took the birth mom out and we went to lunch. And sometimes they would pay, sometimes we would pay. So we didn't pay every time, but those were the expenses. Those were the only expenses outside of attorney and that. And she had pregnancy Medicaid, so we didn't have any doctors or hospital bills. That can be an added expense if your insurance doesn't cover it. So, and I think most times they can get on the pregnancy Medicaid, which will cover, all of the expenses. So it's not something you have to worry about. Because I don't know if any insurances will let you add a birth mom onto yours. You probably have to pay out of pocket, which can definitely add up. When you've already paying this other stuff, you don't need that extra expense. But so that's where, ours was at. So it was about, $7,000 all put together that we paid for that adoption. And now for a second adoption, hopefully with our home study, we'll be able to, oh, and that was another thing I did want to say. With the home study, not only do you have to pay for the home study, but there are several things that you have to pay for in the home study. We had to go get fingerprints and background checks, and it ended up being, it was like $44 a person, so it was $88 that we had to pay for that, because our county that we live in requires an extended or something background check, not just your basic like $5 fingerprints, because we paid for that too. We paid $10 for both of us to get just our fingerprints, and then they told us, no, we have to have this like extended, deeper, whatever. So we that was another $88. You have to go get physicals. So depending on what your insurance is, luckily our insurance covers one physical for every calendar year. So we didn't have any co-pays or, anything out of pocket for that. But if your insurance doesn't cover that, you will have to pay for the physical, because they'll do the blood draw, check, all of that stuff. And then I'm trying to think if there was anything else we had to pay for on that. We had to take our pet, which we take our pets anyways. We had to show where our pets have had their shots for the year, so that if you're not up to date on that, you will have to do that. And I know for this next one, we'll have to take Hudson, because we'll have to have something. I'm not sure if you do know, please put it in the comment bars for anybody who's curious. But now that we already have a child, we will have to have some kind of clearance for Hudson. I guess maybe just saying that he is healthy. So we had to show utility bills. We had to fill out a financial form. But I want to do a video about the home study, so I'll go further into that. But those, I think, were the only things in the home study that we had to pay. But that was another, $100 on top of everything. So my advice would be definitely to kind of stretch it out if you can, so that you're not paying everything at once. So you have a little time to recoup before another $500, because that seems to be like that $500 chunk that you have to pay a lot. But yeah, so that, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm missing something, and if I am, I'll add it down below, would be all of the costs that we incurred with our private in-state adoption. Yeah, so I will, and I will tell you, just to kind of give an idea for price, because a friend of mine adopted, and they live here in Georgia. Their baby was born in Tennessee, and they used the same attorney that we did here in Georgia, but they also had to have an attorney in Tennessee, because I think sometimes attorneys can be certified to work in multiple states. I'm not sure, But theirs ended up being, I think, about $14,000 with the 2 attorney fees. And one thing she did learn the hard way is you want to make sure when you do get an attorney that they have a set fee and they don't charge by the hour, because that's where a lot of their expense came from, because the birth mothers and her mom, they didn't do it on purpose, but they would call the attorney with questions, and they were talkers, so they would talk on the phone, so they got charged a lot just from that kind of thing, because the attorney charged by the hour. So that is one thing to check, and just make sure when you're finding an attorney, is see if they charge by the hour, or if they have, just the set fees. And if they have set fees, that would be the one that I would recommend doing. But okay, I will talk to y'all for the next one.